why did you decide to take this on? I mean, it's obviously not something that's going to make you particularly popular. And I think you have a history of taking on topics of that sort. I mean, what's driving you to do this?
Well, I think there is something slowly slipping away from us as a culture that's worth holding on to. And I feel that from roughly ages 0 to 16, I was living about as colorblind a life as one could. I effortlessly had white friends, black friends, Hispanic friends, and Asian friends. I didn't think of race as anything more than something to occasionally make a joke about. And when, on the rare instances where I did encounter racism, I felt something closer to pity than anger for the racist, the small-minded bigot. It was obvious to me and everyone I knew why racism was evil. I grew up feeling goosebumps watching Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech, as many people do. But around the time I was 16, which would be 2012, I started to get a download of an entirely different kind of anti-racist ideology that explicitly rejected aspirational colorblindness, which told me that by definition, as a black person, I was a victim of white supremacy, which encouraged me to focus on any way, no matter how minuscule, in which I had been made a victim of white supremacy. And it seemed to me that this was not something that was encouraging a closer collaboration and a closer intimacy between people of different races, but was in fact creating neuroticism and paranoia around people of different races. Now there's an expectation. As I'm talking to this person, is this a person who's gonna assume that I'm worried about microaggressions all the time and therefore keep their guard up? Or in the reverse, is this a person who is, highly self-conscious of quote unquote white privilege? And now it just it creates a space of nerves and anxiety around race and dishonesty that I found was not in any way, shape, or form fighting racism, but was making people racially neurotic.
Do you think that the effects of that highlighting of race as a defining characteristic has particularly pernicious effects in like the white community or the black community, or do you think that it's equally pernicious across communities?
That's a good question. I suppose it affects folks in different ways. I know for white people, I think there's a dividing line between white people who feel what is often called white guilt and those who don't. And I think Shelby Steele's point is worth reiterating, which is that white guilt is really misnamed. It's not really guilt. It's a terror at the notion that you might be racist, that you might be part of the problem, and that you might be seen by others as racist. It's a deep terror. And I think those white people who do feel that often end up doing strange and unhealthy things in order to relieve that feeling of terror. They often end up, debasing themselves and playing the masochist, or turning off the skeptical portion of their brain at any claim a black person makes.
Right, which is a real debasing of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a terrible thing to do to an interaction, to make it so that real communication can't take place.
Yeah. And on the other side, with black people, what it encourages us to do is to hone in on everything that's to blame the world and society for everything that has gone wrong in our lives, which is it encourages us to get a sense of meaning and identity out of the notion that we are victims, that society is arrayed against us, that we are part of a noble struggle against a society that is fundamentally hostile to people who look like us.
You can see what a pervasive problem it is, because the last 5 or 6 minutes of this conversation, both you and I automatically assumed that there would be something in common about what the idea of race as a category does to white people, and perhaps something different about what it does to black people. I'm just bringing that up to show how tricky it is to manage the notion of colorblindness given the perceptual presence of racial differences. So